of all, I think your analysis was very straight-lined. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing frogs.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go around that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they weren't talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Tomorrow, Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
Guyanese
erratic
Mickey
detective,
Rodriguez.
is Mickey Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? No, Gildarie, you deal with that. You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Gildarie, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that.
Hi, good evening. Welcome once again to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. Wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, thank you once again for joining us. It has always been a pleasure. More than a year has elapsed since we began this program, and it has been a very thrilling ride, sometimes very upsetting for myself and maybe for Freddie, but definitely entertaining along the way. I want to say on behalf of myself and Freddie Kissoon, and as well as a panel here tonight, Freddie is going to do the honors of introducing. We want to say a happy CARICOM Day, or should we have a lot to be celebrating today as we celebrate, or as the nation and the region observe this day. And that is going to be what we're going to be centering on the discussions tonight. What is it about CARICOM that we should be discussing? What is it that the people should be happy about or not? I have been absent for the last 2 weeks. I apologize for that. I wasn't feeling too well. Then I had to make a emergency trip overseas. But I'm back. And guess what? It's going to be an exceptional next couple of months. Long list of guests lined up. So I'm not going to waste any time. We have a packed agenda here this evening. I'm going to say once again, welcome to my co-host, Freddie Kissoon, as always, never absent, always here. Done a fantastic job while I was away over the last 2 weeks. And I must say, Freddie, numbers were looking pretty good. Welcome. Over to you, sir.
Hi there. Based in different time zones, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. This day marks 50 years of a seminal institution that has brought a number of former colonies of the British Empire in the West Indies together. Same kind of style, culture, architecture, language. They have that seminal institution has brought us together. I don't think anyone in the Caribbean would believe this institution will go away. It's going to be with us for a long time. Today is the 50th anniversary of CARICOM, the Caribbean Union, the Caribbean Integration Movement. And we have asked two gentlemen with enormous experience as Caribbean men, as Caribbean personalities, to tell us where is this thing going? How important is it? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? What are we to think about this thing called CARICOM, this integration movement, this movement that has one Caribbean examination called CXC, one passport that says CARICOM, and then we have the Caribbean Court of Justice. So we've asked tonight Dr. Mark Kirton, who has more than 35 years of teaching at the two premier institutions in the Caribbean, University of Guyana and University of the West Indies. In case you missed him, he was a guest on this program when he launched his book. I'm going to show you the book. This is his book, and he was a guest to present the material in this book, Guyana-Brazil Relation into the 21st Century. If you want to get the contents of that program, please go to YouTube, type in Gildarie Freddie Kissoon Show, Dr. Mark Kirton, and the interview will come up, and he will tell you about the invaluable friendship that Guyana should pursue with one of the most important economies of the world. According to Dr. Kirton, Guyana sit next to a country, a big, powerful country that we should make the most of. Our second guest has spent 15 years holding some very, very formidable, important positions in the CARICOM Secretariat. You would know the CARICOM Secretariat is located in Georgetown, 2 minutes drive from where I live at Turkheim. He has worked there for 15 years and has held some very, very important positions. So we will be having the views on CARICOM from someone right inside there, and that is Mr. Neville Bissember Jr. Now, when you hear the word junior, you will know, of course, he's named after his father. Just in passing, we have stressed on this program that we hope when each program is finished, there is some contribution left to history that the younger people could know about. Our population is very young, so you would not know the father of the man who sits in the studio tonight. In the 60s, he was one of the most important politicians on the Guyanese scene. He represented Guyana along with his party, the PNC, at the London conference to decide on independence. And he was a member of the cabinet of his party under Mr. Forbes Burnham. Neville Bissember. In the studio this evening is Neville Bissember Jr. So with that long introduction, we go alphabetically. We start with B, Mr. Bissember. And our first question is CARICOM going anywhere, Mr. Bissember?
Yeah, thank you, Freddie, for that fulsome introduction. To Leonard, thank you, and of course my colleague and friend, Dr. Kirton. And just for the record, the old man was legal advisor to the PNC at the London Constitutional Conference. It was a big delegation, but he went in the capacity of legal advisor. That's why you see most of the photographs. He's sitting on Boreham's left, because he was one of the key advisors. But that is history. I thought
important history too.
Yeah, I thought Mark, and well, I know I'd put it to the panel that we could set some parameters for the discussion. Like, first of all, to speak to your question, to put things in a temporal context, a time frame, from whence we come it, and where till we have arrived. Sure. All right. Are we better off? For me, the short answer is yes. We can debate that, people that CARICOM, CARICOM, whatever. For me, from inside the engine room at the Secretariat, in the Secretary General's office, as Assistant General Counsel, as officer in charge of the legal division, I say the short answer is yes, we are better off. How we know that? From the time we were growing up, you hear people say there's strength in numbers, and unity is strength. And therefore, you could use any example. GCC, the Darts Association, horse racing, any club, any grouping that you join. If you show me how you can be better off from leaving a club or a group or an organization, if the rules aren't working for you, which I've heard some private sector people in Guyana say they're not getting enough out of CARICOM. If you show me, pick any club, the Guyana Cricket Club, the Darts Association, if you show me how you can be better off by leaving that club, that grouping, you think you'll be better off in CARICOM? If you come out of CARICOM, then you'd have to pay a CT to export to Trinidad or to Barbados. Right now is one single market and all the rest of it. So if we use those parameters, where we were, where we are now, the simple thing about strength in numbers, using a simplistic example of a membership of a club, and I think it's better to stay in the group, whether you're Trinidad or Jamaica or Barbados or Antigua, it's better to stay in the group and try to maximize your benefits than to leave and lose all the rights and benefits. Bearing in mind that as a common turn of phrase or work of art, we normally say there's strength in numbers. So, I mean, that was my opening thing to set the discussion.
Interesting you say that, the thinking on integration in the Caribbean is not new. And I would say that because of this process of decolonization which emerged in the 50s and so on, people were thinking that there must be some form of unity among countries that, as Freddie mentioned, were former members of the former British Empire. And indeed, I believe the thinking on integration, it expanded and is there until now, but there have been some challenges. Indeed, when one looked at the beginning, the federation, I would say that the federation was the structure that perhaps, though a little bit misplaced and might have had the British kind of mold in it, I think it also brought about the thinking or developed the thinking. Although, after time they had that saying, 1 from 10 leaves 0. And which means that there was fragmentation even that early. But the thinking did not die. You had in 1965, you had CARICOM. Small, but I think structured in a sense. And by 1973, we had a common market. Yeah. But I believe that there was fragmentation then. There was still levels of insularity. Countries were looking for independence in the 60s by themselves, and there's where I believe that the political will was not strongly present. And so, in a sense, what I saw to start, the discussion was indeed the thinking was there. You had efforts very early, 1958 was the federation, right? 1958. Yeah. You had the thinking kind of emerging. You had the collapse of the federation. You had the continuation of some levels of thinking of unity, and then some insularity stepped in based on independence, based on individual countries moving in that process. So it always had a level of fragmentation, which I think continues today, with higher levels of insularity and some even selfishness, I would say, emerging.
Gildarie?
I wanted to throw a spanner in the works here. Today I was looking at a couple of things. How many outstanding persons within the Caribbean has made it on the world stage. Of course, we have our Rihanna, our very own Eddie Grant. I saw a Jamaican guy today. I think it's Mr. Grant. A Grant from Jamaica, who went on to London and doing this big event, a music festival. He was able to do a song by I think is the Italian tenor Andrea Bocelli, and sang it even better than that. So we have pretty outstanding people here. So I understand strength in numbers. I understand that. But let's look at cricket. The last couple of days, the people within the Caribbean has been tearing their hair out because of what happened to the West Indies, disintegrated. And one has got to ask themselves, if it is that we have CARICOM there, how have we gotten it so wrong? Anybody could answer that, because I love cricket, and to see what happened there, and I believe that CARICOM could have been playing a more integral role in it. However, somehow we can't get the message across. What is wrong? Did CARICOM play a role? Could somebody tell me? I don't know.
In cricket?
Well, I don't know if CARICOM played a role. I mean, there was
I know that there was something.
Report.
There was something right. I know that there was a report.
But I don't know if we should isolate cricket. I mean, cricket has for the Caribbean.
No, but as an example of how it works.
I hear you, but CARICOM, I mean, cricket until quite recently has been a very strong uniting force in in the Caribbean. We all continue to rally quota around the West Indies. I mean, even when they're losing, we were saying, give these guys a chance. And there have been other successes, I think, in CARICOM. The very fact that we could have CXC, Caribbean Exams Council, even though now I hear people doing some things with the exams, and sometimes there's some breaches, which could happen with other exams too, but from outside the Caribbean. But I see some successes in CARICOM. And cricket, to my mind, was one, and I hope it will bounce back. But we've seen some other areas. The University of West Indies, I think, is a success for CARICOM. Is you're talking about recently, when you look at things like climate change and the 5 Cs, the Caribbean Community Center for Climate Change. I think that's a success. There's a Caribbean Public Health Agency. So when we're looking at some successes, but I know that in the midst of success, we've seen some insularity, as I mentioned, and it is there. And while I don't want to isolate cricket and it is a disappointment for you and for me. I mean, I get up running in the morning and look at the cricket, and I want to turn off the TV because our boy is not doing well. But I think there would be a time, and cricket seems to be a cycle, for the Caribbean. We had times when, until maybe after Bev Richards, we saw
the cycle would date back till to the 90s or late 80s.
Well, yeah, but you got to rebuild. We have to rebuild, and I would hope that both the administration and the cricketing, the young cricketers, will understand that it's not only the bling of cricket. I mean, but rather a kind of commitment to country.
Pride in playing for the West.
Yes. As you see in a lot of other cricketing nations, some of them say, I can't play in the leagues because I'm committed to playing for my country. Well, the Caribbean people might say the dollar sign is more important than the pride.
Right.
I think both you, Mark, I mean, I just did some scribbles earlier this evening, but it seems that both you and Brother Leonard looked at my notes.
Is it? Okay.
I was watching the opening ceremony for the CARICOM conference this afternoon on NCN, and lo and behold, they cut away from the opening when the UN Secretary General was talking to broadcast the news. I don't know how the news, anyway, maybe it's the enforcement and the news. I don't know if the news could be more important than that, the 50th anniversary opening ceremony. But two things. Mr. Rowley mentioned cricket in passing. He just threw it in at the end. But more importantly, to say, and I look at where we were, where we come to now, the president of Korea is in Trinidad. South Korea, of course.
The Prime Minister.
Prime Minister.
Of Korea, right.
Yeah.
UN Secretary General Gutierrez, who had been a fixture, I speak from experience when I was in the Secretary General's office, I was the point of contact. Every face-to-face meeting CARICOM has had, that gentleman has showed up. Last year, they called me. When I retired, I had to tell the lady I don't work there anymore. He wanted to come down. The president of Rwanda is coming. Anthony Blinken is coming. These people are busy people, right? We had tried in the past. We tried to get the man from Canada, Trudeau. At the last minute, he had some internal problems. He canceled. We tried to get the chairman of the ACP at the time, President Obiang from Equatorial Guinea. Put all the arrangements in place. He canceled. When you see you got 4 leaders like that, and I call Mr. Blinken a leader. This is as good as you can get. I know that Mr. Biden will jump on an airplane and come down, but CARICOM has met with Biden about 2 or 3 times already since he has been elected. Those are milestones that people could tick off. You talk about insularity. Mm-hmm. The thing about 4 or 5 people getting invited to Mar-a-Lago, that has gone.
Gone.
This is gone. We know in an era where the United States government is dealing with the community for their purposes. They include Dominican Republic sometimes, but they're dealing with the community, Quack community. Ms. Harris went to Bahamas that day to meet with the community. I know what you're talking about, the insularity. It also showed up in some of the cricket. And Leonard, you probably don't remember. There was a Barreto report which I was the secretary for. Some distinguished people, Derek Murray.
What report?
Bartow, Eugene Bartow. She was principal of UE at the time, commissioned by PM Mitchell after we had a meeting with the legends and Cameron and Company, Dave Cameron and Company. And we came up again with a set of recommendations. And some miscellaneity came out. Some people felt the government should stay out of it. Mr. Rowley was new to the thing and he was very vocal. Had others who were a little standoffish. Suriname, they don't play cricket. Haiti, they don't play cricket. But I wouldn't hold, as a matter of fact, what I had done in scribbling, I had some pluses. You mentioned some. CXC, Impact, Sidimo, 5 Cs. And I had cricket as a minus. I also had Haiti as a minus, we can come to that. And in between, I had UWI and CARIFESTO. Now, UWI has been one of the success stories of the integration process. However, this might be an element of insularity, I'm not so sure. But we had a University of Guyana for a long time. And then what happened? You had Anton de Kom in Suriname, you had CAST in Jamaica, which is the College of Arts, Science and Technology, which is now the University of Technology. This is a tertiary institution, a technical college that has now become an institution.
The University of Trinidad and Tobago.
University of Trinidad and Tobago. Everybody wants a university. The OECS boys, not to be left out. Mr. Beckers, Professor Beckers has set up some 5 islands thing, some distance, something. Bahamas, they have their own law school. Issues there about cost of traveling to get education. So yes, the insularity is there, but I'm still saying at the end of the day, when the chips are down, on some of the big ticket issues like climate change, COVID, I speak from experience. What we in the Secretariat, led by the Secretary General and CARPA, Dr. St. John, a phenomenal job in the height of the COVID, when we couldn't get vaccines, when some of our traditional friends were hoarding vaccines, had 3 and 4 doses stockpiled in the capital, and we had to turn to some non-traditional people like India and China. The African Union helped us to get vaccines. And there was a centralization process managed by the Secretariat, ably led by CARPA, which is the Caribbean Health Agency, to bring about that kind of linkage that I'm talking about. So yes, you're right about the insanity, but I don't know that it supersedes the...
You raised one of my pet peeves, the issue of Haiti.
Haiti. Yeah, we'll come to that, yeah.
Now, Haiti, to my mind, having been made a member of CARICOM, with its rights and responsibilities, obligations, and all those words which, come with membership. Imagine today, Haitians want to come to this region, have to have a visa. Every single CARICOM state. Is that you with me or not? You can't say a part member. Just say Haiti, here, forget the membership, thank you or something. But Haiti, to me, is a representative of this region, the first independent state that I think brought the thinking of independence into the
Is it only Guyana that has that visa?
No, everybody.
Everybody? Well, in the Guyana case, it was specific when Guyana, I think it was during the Greens administration, where they decided, I think, them and was the other country, there was 2 countries, Cuba, that they decide no visas, and the people were taken. And people, the reason I think why this administration decided to go back to the visa was because there was a belief, on evidence and otherwise, that there was, the people were just passing through here.
But you can manage migration. My argument is you have to manage migration. If you tell me that
enlighten me.
Any one of those could get 6 months as a CARICOM national. Why?
I tell you what I know, and you tell me what.
Why is Haiti different?
Let me start as a general principle and say that any country that has a history of out-migration, of refugees, and the world has moved on now. 10, 20 years ago, we only used to talk about refugees. There was a UN convention on refugees. It was a specific thing. People who are fleeing political persecution, and there's a French concept called non-refoulement. They can't, for fear of return back to their country, they're allowed asylum. We move on now, there's something called migration. Because under the Refugee Convention, there's a distinction between political refugees and economic migrants. But the world has moved on. There's now an international organization of migration. And because of the push factors from Africa and some other countries here in Haiti and Cuba and so on, we've now had to cater for a new group of people, economic migrants. You don't shun them anymore, send them back where they come from.
But why would this?
Hold on, let me land. Most of the Venezuelans, right, that come across the border by Etringbang, if you send them back to Venezuela, they won't be arrested or tried or thrown into prison as political prisoners, you know. They are economic migrants fleeing their country or birth for a better life, who were different from John Jones, Mary Smith, who was persecuted, who was a political opponent in a country, and they're fleeing for their life. They're two fundamentally different things. So Haiti has always been a country with a history of producing migrants. So if you want to visit a visa-free policy on a country like that, you have to be careful. You should hear the Bahamians, who are not part of the single market, not part of the free market.
Did we err by introducing that?
Huh?
Did we err by introducing that?
I don't know. I don't know if it's an error, my friend. The heads of government, in their wisdom, took a decision that, look, as Mark quite rightly says, Haiti is a full member, so they should get the full rights. I personally had a little problem with that because, okay, we allowed Haiti to come in. It was a language issue. And so we started to work with them. I had our colleague Norris Brady of blessed memory. Some colleagues of mine used to be flying out to Haiti 4 or 5 times a year to work with the customs people, work with the lawyers, work with the animal health people to bring their systems and procedures up to speed so that they could come what we call CSME compliant. They were moving along at a hell of a pace, and bam, the earthquake hit. You lost civil servants, you lost records, you lost a lot of institutional capacity. So that process was set back. And then we set up a liaison office in Haiti. And they never caught back the momentum. So Haiti, even though they were full members, they were not as yet fully CSME compliant. And I had a view that to the extent that they were not CSME compliant, we could use some yardsticks, put a sliding scale, say to them, okay, in 1 year we will introduce this, in 2 years we'll introduce this, and one of those things will be the visa-free requirement. We had an arrangement before, which was working, where visa holders, Haitians who had Schengen visas or US visas could come into the region. When that first started, I had a conceptual difficulty with it. I'm saying, why is a third country deciding who must come to mind? But it made sense. Because if you could jump through the hoops to get a US visa, or jump through the hoops to get a Schengen visa.
So we respond to external stimuli.
Yes, I sat in a meeting with some distinguished foreign ministers who argued that. And I had a personal problem, but I rationalized that. So we allowed them to come with a Haitian, if they had a US visa or a Schengen visa. When we went the full distance now, and introduce the visa-free thing. And we realized, you know, the country that led the charge for that same country had to go back to Haiti and say, excuse me, this thing don't work so. Because what happened? Just like what happened in Guyana. You had the middlemen in Haiti. No, I prefer not to. You had the middlemen in Haiti who were telling people, go to Barbados, you can get a work. Go to Guyana, they can't turn you back. Yes, you can go to Suriname, we got somebody going to meet you there. They collect the money. I think they had COPA, and they could get COPA from Panama.
They were coming
and they come down. Right? And so there was an influx.
But the Venezuelans come across the border, they're not coming nothing.
The Venezuela thing is different. You mentioned about if Guyana.
A member of CARICOM, a member state with full membership. You put in all of these checks and balances, how much this and that, how much manage migration. But yet people coming across a border to small states, you know, not Guyana alone. Some of them end up in Trinidad, some in Montserrat, some all over. But for member state citizens, you're saying, visa and all kinds of requirements that you're putting in place. I don't think
because of the
I don't think that.
But he didn't explain the rationale for that. Not that I agree, but I'm saying he explained
the issue of refugees. Yeah, you know, that issue. You should hear the Jamaicans. You should hear the Bahamians, the Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos. They have a constant influx of Asians washing up.
Tell me, was there not a
shores.
consensus when these folks?
No consensus. Was a decision. But people, you take a decision. As empires of blessed memory used to tell me, you take a decision without thinking about the systemic consequences of the decision.
So why you take it then?
No, mister.
That's out of experience.
That's a little above my pay grade. The people who took that decision, I tell you, internally, I discussed it with colleagues and
if you look at the composition of CARICOM, there are more non-English speaking citizens of CARICOM than there are English speakers. When they add Haiti, I'm sorry now.
Yeah, but I don't change the price of
That's because of the population.
I don't change the price of everything. So we should start speaking French. So we should start speaking French. So we should start speaking French.
We should start ensuring though that all the laws are translated into French.
Yes.
And Dutch.
Which
are not done because of any
But Gildarie, you know what you have going on here.
No, but it's
the academic versus the bureaucrat.
No,
15 years
in the league,
15 years advising the Secretary General, and then you have the academic who sees things more.
Academic license.
No, it's not academic.
Yeah, but what the Dr. Kirton is, and I understand what you're saying, and of course I take the point there, and I think both are very solid arguments. Because on one hand, how do you turn away the Venezuelans, especially what was happening there? But the Haiti is part. How do you do that? The problem, I think 2 years back, I would have had a different view. But with the shortage of labor right now, do you know that one of the big savior right now that is saving a lot of businesses in Guyana is the influx of the Venezuelans, because they have been providing a key solution to the problem that we have with employment.
In the short term.
On the short term.
Yeah.
So from that sense, but I'm not sure. I agree. I want to agree that when the decision was taken at that level to block it, that it may provide a problem if you're viewing it from the Venezuelan angle. But
let me just clarify something which you said. You asked the question, if it was only Guyana. I teach a master's course in Caribbean Community and Competition Law, and there was a student in there who was hell-bent on arguing that Guyana was discriminating against Haitians, and they put in the racial component and so on. So I explained to him, just according to history, was a CARICOM head's decision to remove the visas, was a CARICOM head's decision to put it back. Right? And if you go down the racial route, then are the Jamaicans discriminating? Is Barbados discriminating? Those countries are primarily Afro-Caribbean people. But you see, these things sound good in Guyana.
No, so
it sound good.
I don't think no race element got to go in.
Yeah, that was one of the...
But he was saying the student.
Yeah, no, they should know. No, they should know. The student says so. The student says Guyana was discriminating.
There was that argument, right?
Yeah, the current government, basically, I mean, he didn't come out and say it, but you can read between them. But other people were saying that. You see on the Facebook, these nice nuisance people on Facebook. But the thing about the race and the PPP government and things and so on, is a CARICOM decision. I tell you, I'm not going to mention to you, Freddie, but the country, right, it's not Guyana or Suriname, which is led by 2 Indian presidents.
If you didn't work for 15 years in the secretariat at those big levels, you would have named the country.
No.
It's your bureaucratic background.
No. I don't think.
Mark, you know the country.
I don't know that.
You know the country who went to Haiti saying.
I don't know that name of the country adds any value to the discussion.
No, it adds to history.
Well, all right.
For example,
off the camera.
You said something here that I want to repeat before I go back to Gildarie, and viewers should not miss it. Every Guyanese who has an interest in how international relations operate and what should be the foreign policy of these countries called CARICOM. You said something here that I listened, and it got swept away in the vortex of discussion. That when CARICOM needed the traditional friends to give them visas, those traditional vaccines. Those traditional friends were holding it. And CARICOM was able to get vaccines from its non-traditional area. I don't think he will want to go into details, but you know how significant that disclosure is.
Oh, no,
then it's time for
that's public. The
then
first,
it's time for us to depend on our
the
traditional
first set of vaccines that came here.
What name was India?
India gave Miss Motley, I think 15,000.
And she gave us.
She called President Ali. She said, Mister, 4,000 for you. And she called the Secretary General. Because the Secretary General took a decision. Okay, let me just contextualize that. We shut down the building. But if you know the Secretary, they're quadrants. So the Secretary General's office is in a quadrant upstairs. It's isolated. And he said to us, look, we got to come to work. This is the height of the Guyanese election. The height of COVID, he said, yeah, I got to come to work. So the core staff in the Secretary General's office, myself and my colleagues, we had to keep going to work. And then that building can't function without certain people, the drivers, the cleaners, the receptionists and so on. So there's a core staff that never worked from home. We used to go. She called the SG, she said, SG, you got some staff there? Out of the thing I sent in the Prime Minister, or the President, 100 is for you. And I was a beneficiary of that. And let me tell you, not only the senior people, as I told you, you drop a list, and then we discovered some people don't want the visa. I talked to the vaccine. I talked to somebody, Mr. Bissember, frightening, so we have to go now and get another list, because the morning when the people came, they brought the first 50 doses and they bring some extras. And the Secretary said, no, he does not want no vaccine to be wasted. Because apparently want to break the seal. You got to go 4 or 6 other things. So we had to go down the list and get some other people who were not scared of the vaccine. I think in the end we gave out like 65 on that day. So I was from India. And this was the personal contact with people like PM Skerritt, Miss Motley. There was an issue in Trinidad, I don't remember, with PM Rowley and the Indian High Commission and so on. The Chinese stepped in. The African Union set up a facility. And I can tell you, even when our friends in the North eventually said that they're going to give us the vaccine, now, I credit you, Mr. Biden, when he announced the thing, he said $1 million for Haiti. Because they were in a mess in Haiti. Right? $1 million for Haiti, but even when they announced that they were going to send vaccine, and we had the photo up and the US ambassador there collecting the vaccines, we still had to jump through some other bureaucratic hoops, because the companies that were involved were dealing with us on a commercial basis, on a market basis. And the price was prohibitive. And let's face it, gentlemen, none of these issues had been put into anybody's national budget. PPE, vaccines, sanitization, nobody budgeted for that. Where we get the money from?
Gildarie, as a journalist who's going to be around for a long time, that disclosure there,
that's the inner workings.
It puts your perspective about how this world operates in full focus.
But Freddie,
that disclosure, I'm glad we discussed it again.
It's along the same line.
When your traditional friends, you look to them, you look over your shoulder, they're not there. But
what did Israeli say about permanent interests and permanent friends?
Well, it's along the same line I really wanted to ask, because I could talk for me, and I think the majority of Guyanese, I want to believe, would probably hold the same view. The workings of CARICOM, the secretariat and everything, they always seem to be mystery, or I think they have not been doing a good job. That's my feeling. Of getting the services that they're offering to the people, let them understand what is it that we're doing. CMSE and a whole bunch of other things, the CET and so on, the education sensitization process I'm talking about. Do you believe that they're falling short of that?
There are two answers to that. One is there had been some PR lapses. We admit that. We needed to do a better job getting our message out. But more importantly, and this might have had to do with the personality of the previous Secretary General, who I worked with for 10 years. He was my colleague as a Director of Trade before, when I was running the General Counsel's office. I know the man.
Mr. Carrington?
No, Mr. Larrock. Mr. Carrington, we don't have some of those issues at the time. But by nature, you know, look, you can't say everything, Freddie, right? But I just use an example. Dr. Korten would know the Guyanese election. I'll just make a statement here. If it wasn't for CARICOM, the outcome of that election would have been different. I can't go further than that, right? If he knows that the things we did behind the scenes, you don't see a photograph with the CARICOM ambassador meeting with this and issuing statement and thing, huh? what we doing, we work in the background, friend, is we brokered a deal between the two parties to get a recount. Coming out of a meeting when the CARICOM heads came here, and they met with the two sides, and we had a separate meeting.
Ms. Motley requested your intervention.
Who's your intervention?
Ms. Motley requested by your intervention.
No. You see, and
you didn't take that step on your own.
I had to explain this. I had to explain this to somebody. The community don't enter into the internal affairs of member states unless they're invited.
Okay.
They have to be invited.
Of course. They can't just jump on the airplane and come in. They were in contact with Mr. Granger. He said, yes, I'll come through and think. People were worried about what was happening. They come through. They came, they met the two sides, and they do some serious, intense negotiation, and people express their views. And it's okay, well, we got to do a recount. This Saturday morning, when the first announcement, I don't know if you remember, Ms. Motley issued a statement this Saturday morning saying they were going to do a recount for Region 4.
This is for the 2020 election.
Which was the contentious region.
Yeah.
And I got a text on my phone from an up-to politician saying, hey, friend, this is not what we agreed. We agreed to recount all 10. Right? And I discussed it with the SG, said, boy, take this man, right? We have to go do another round. I don't know if you remember, by the afternoon, the Secretary General issued a corrigenda saying that the recount will cover all 10 regions. Right? That was what had been agreed in a meeting that we broke. But then to get the mission here, you have to get, I tell you, these things weren't nobody's budget. You have to get funding to observer mission. With COVID, that's a charter plane. Go and pick them up, go up the island chain. Look, when I write the book, man.
But a man who was involved with that but Dr. Kirton would have been probably preview. There's a rebuttal I sense in the air?
No rebuttal. I was just to say that, yes, CARICOM had a interventionist role in some ways. Some people did not necessarily support that type of approach. But I think at the end of the day, one could say that CARICOM did play a role in the outcome.
And you agree it was with the agreement of the parties. We not in sort of
yeah.
So that shows the importance of CARICOM. But
however,
right.
I want to go to this issue that you talked about, CARICOM and its performance. Now, my view is that there has been an implementation deficit in all areas of CARICOM's activity. You got people that come like this. I sure if you look
implementation deficit.
Yeah,
I like that, Marco.
Freddie.
Asking by who?
By who?
Yeah,
by the government.
Thank you. Not the secretary.
No.
Not the secretary.
See, okay,
we can only do so much, my friend.
The secretary has no legal.
We can only do so much.
The secretary
do so much. But for the sake of the people, the secretariat
has no legal link.
Yeah, they make a decision at the CARICOM level, and the government implements, and that is what you. That's what.
Yes, I'm saying it's a deficit. Now you turn up at heads of government, some wonderful agreements were signed. Most of the prime ministers go back home. And the inconvenient thing is, they say, well, not me. It's not for this country. It's for them,
but does not fly in the face? Does not fly in the face of which
No. I'm saying at the end of the day, the Secretariat itself is not clothed in any kind of legal authority to ensure compliance with those agreements that have been signed. It's consensus. Oh, yeah, we can do it when we have the time.
You're right. But again,
to me, there's a real constraint to CARICOM.
Yeah. But you guys are arguing that, that on the bigger picture, what CARICOM represents, some of the work, that overwhelming benefits from that. It probably overwhelms that deficit as well.
Well, I would say that there are strengths and there are some significant weaknesses. Some successes, but some challenges which I think we need to look at, including that free movement of people. There's one for me, that you're telling me that in 2007, they had World Cup cricket here, right, in this region. When external non-Caribbean people turn up in Jamaica, they start on the put on a thing and they could go to any country in this region. Why could we not have ensured that was retained?
You know why?
No, wait, hold on.
You know why?
It had something called Curry Pass. You know Curry Pass?
The thing at the airport has also some gates.
People put it down now.
Yeah, some gates.
Freddie,
Yeah.
the people got a thing now in Mount Ballers in cold storage or hot storage.
No, but we must ask ourselves why.
Exactly. I'm
because
saying
of the member
that
states.
the failure of the Caribbean community. The leaders' political will is not there.
We were told.
When did that? Yeah.
We were told that when we put the implementing legislation, we are kind of taking status of forces to move people with the single entry and thing. We were told to write in a sunset clause.
Why?
Well, Mr. What's going to ask them? People go and ask them.
No, but you wouldn't say
No, the heads, the people, the governments. The governments require that. Look, that's why when you come to Guyana, you got to fill one immigration form. You go to Trinidad and different immigration form. Some of them tell me, well, they're tourist industries and they need to know the statistics, what hotel you're staying in, if it's an apartment and so on. Guyana don't ask you that. And it's ask you with the address where you're staying. Right. People, when you could have had one immigration form and you fill one and just give a copy, you end up filling one for Guyana, one for Barbados. Come on, man.
In 2007, we had this thing, right? World Cup cricket. People coming from all about, and they're getting into the countries without anything. Now it's coming back, 2024. There's going to be World Cup, T20 World Cup or something.
We are playing Netherlands or not?
No, the Caribbean. People will come from all over.
Scotland
and but still, if some people go to Barbados, they got some guy on the bench.
That's right.
What is this about?
That's right.
Yes, Gildarie.
I want to ask, for the sake of the people out there, what does it take to run the CARICOM sector annually?
The budget?
Yes.
I don't know. There's a budget that is prepared every year. It's a good question, though, because like Mark was saying just now, we don't have sanctions, right? When I used to be in Brussels at the ACP Secretariat, if people don't pay their contributions,
but each member state has to pay a year.
Yeah, it's based on a fancy formula, and countries complain about the formula. Some of the big boys pay more than the smaller boys, the MDCs more developed, all kind of thing. It's a complex formula. And people are complaining about the formula, right? At the ACP, a different range of sanctions. For instance, you wouldn't get invited to a meeting, right? So country got to tell you, boy, CARICOM have a meeting or the ACP meeting, you won't get invited. Or you won't get documents for the meeting. No, you're wasting your time if you're going to a meeting without documents. And you go down the level of sanctions. There was one where we would not hire nationals of that country in the Secretariat. I think that was the highest, and over a sliding scale. We don't have nothing like that in the Secretariat. And I can say now here that some of the people that make the most noise.
People will be paying.
But look,
how many staffers we have here?
That make the most noise.
Well, guess what, Freddie? Guess what? In 1995 or something along then, we had something called the West Indian Commission.
Yeah.
In their report, Time for Action.
Yeah.
They talked about widening and deepening the integration movement
Headed
at
by
the same time.
right?
Yes.
All kind of things that come up with that.
CARICOM was instrumental in establishing something called the Association of Caribbean States, ACS.
Wash.
All countries washed by the Caribbean Sea. Right? As a matter of fact, if they've been going like that, Guyana wouldn't be a member because Guyana is not washed by the Caribbean Sea. So I had to go back to membership of CARICOM and so on. Now, they're saying that all countries washed by the Caribbean Sea would include Cuba, Mexico, all of Central America, Venezuela, Colombia.
And then they got like France and then with Martinique. France, all this.
This is CARICOM.
Because of Martinique.
Oh,
they are department.
The US too, because
all this was CARICOM saying, CARICOM, establish it.
The wise men. Mr. Rampal.
You tell me that there was consensus and it was taken at the meeting of the CARICOM heads.
Oh yes, I was
Association of Caribbean States.
Now, basically,
with a specific mandate, and most of the mandate now.
We got some things make you laugh. Imagine The Caribbean Court of Justice has its headquarters in Trinidad, and Trinidad is not a member in their appellate jurisdiction.
Yeah.
It's how much? 5 members of the CARICOM? Five members of right? Are members of the CCJ.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me about political will, there's an absence of that in a sense. So CARICOM is constrained. I'm not bearing the secretariat because, as I said, no legal legs they don't have. But I think we need to be serious if we deal in, and there's a lot of fragmentation too. Look, in the 21st century, I've looked at some of the things that emerged. Something called the ALBA out of Venezuela. ALBA was started by Chavez. Is the what do you call it? Alternative.
We didn't get oil because of
it's a Petro-Caribbean, right?
Oh.
No, you have that. That in a sense brought some friction because it was obviously very ideological. Some countries are members of the ALBA till now. St. Vincent, Dominica, I think St. Lucia, and so on. Now, at the same time, we had something called UNASUR that took in Guyana and Suriname because there's a Union of South American States. All of those things, to my mind. And then there's SICA, Central American Integration System, which engaged Belize, right? There's the OECS, which fragments in a sense. So we had a spaghetti bowl, I call it, of integration efforts in the early 21st century. That also had an impact, I believe, on CARICOM's emergence as a strong integration movement. So how do you change that now?
Well, as I mentioned, the OECS, that's a good point because I had a note here about them. When you were to look at different institutions, in the OECS, you could travel with your driver's license. Right, you don't need a passport there, which they have
within the OECS.
They could travel with a driver's license.
Right. And if you don't have a driver's license,
no, well, the photo ID, but mostly the driver's license they accept. But no, the point I'm making though is that their integration process was much easier to manage for a number of reasons. The economies are similar. They already had a single currency. They already had a history of those communal activities. For instance, they had one regional aviation authority. They had one procurement facility for pharmaceuticals. So it was easier for them to go ahead. And they came to us, CARICOM, with this view that they're making the OECS union operationalizing it. And, the lawyers and other people said, hey, you got to be careful because, this is one single market and so on. And this goes to things like Haiti and visas and so on. But the committee took a decision, led by some of the more wiser heads, that look, we got to decide that we're going to do like a 2-speed system. And if there's a coalition of the willing that wants to go ahead, let them go. Who want to implement an arrest warrant treaty, let them put it. Who want to implement driver's license travel, let them put it. Rather than wait on the others to go forward together, which was holding up the integration, and people say, we ain't doing nothing, free movement, Shanik, Maria, all them things, cricket and so on. He said, no, we could decide if, for instance, like the OECS, they want to go ahead, let them go, and the others can catch up as the issues arise for determination. The other point, Mark, about your implementation deficit is 2 things. Very often, we have something in the treaty, right? Carrington is famous for reading it to them. Article 27.5, you can look at it. You said that where the community is about to take a decision, the secretary is supposed to point out to them the financial implications. You sit down in a meeting, and these men take a decision to go on a fact-finding mission to Europe to complain about correspondent banking. We didn't put in no budget, but he had to take that decision. The Secretary General got to go now, find the resources to put that decision in place. That's just a simplistic example.
So you might ask the EU to fund it. You might ask the EU to fund it.
But then what happens is when the same, as you say, when the Prime Ministers go home and they go and talk to the Minister of Finance, he ain't got the money. Or there's a capacity problem. They don't have drafts people. They might not have a core of vets to do the health checks or the phytosanitary measures. So the decision is taken, but the Prime Minister is sitting on, I tell you also, the Secretary General, you say one time, you went to a meeting and the Prime Minister telling me, but actually how you could be bringing this thing to us now with the heads down. If anybody discussed the thing, he said, Madam, we discussed this at a previous meeting, at a meeting of your ministers. She said, what? So he said, what? The gentleman didn't make no report to the cabinet. She said, no. So that's what's happened, as you said, right? The minister of trade, energy, whatever, come to a meeting, they take decision, and whatever report he bring back to the PM or the cabinet colleagues might not be as fulsome. So when we bring it to the level of heads now, we think it has already get dissected and implemented.
But CARICOM got so many different committees.
I want to ask you guys something because time is going.
Yeah.
You had the Mining Initiative, which is supposed to be close integration between Barbados, Trinidad, and Guyana. There seemed to be a creeping, unusual closeness between Guyana and Barbados. Are we witnessing are we part of the Mining Initiative?
Money.
The stick with that is don't name no initiative after yourself. Money initiative, Jagdo initiative. As soon as you come out the scene, they kill it. They kill it.
But
the man who replaced Money don't want to hear nothing but Money initiative. The person who replaced Jagdo don't want to hear nothing but Jagdo initiative. You know what we're doing here now, a lot of these food security things. They're digging back up things from the Jagdo initiative. You had with the Jagdo, a lot of them things we had discussions about a long time ago. But it fell away. So the Money initiative, it fell away. Because the wrong name.
But Barbados and Guyana seem to be getting very close.
They're close. Yeah. But look, when you look at some of the constraints in CARICOM, some serious ones, transport. If you got to go from here to Barbados for so much, 400, 500 US dollars. Sometimes you could get to Miami cheaper.
Yeah, the US ambassador said that.
I mean, what happened? Why don't we have some easier intra-Caribbean travel? What's the problem?
Well,
what about moving goods? You know, they said 25% reduction in imports by 2025. And you got nothing yet in place. What's happening?
Well, a colleague of mine told me they found some people because the problem was always the costing and who can manage it, or if you can build, operate, and transfer, or whatever. And then some people argue that the load factor is not there, like with the honey thing. I talked to some of the honey people here and asked them why they can't ship direct to Barbados and then straight up to Miami. Apparently the volume is not there, and the cost is prohibitive for them to ship to Barbados and then go up to Miami. So it's easier for them
to go to Trinidad.
And Trinidad got a 1925 law.
Yeah, we have just about 2 minutes more.
I know, I did some research on that, and there's something about customs in transit. I can't find no other jurisdiction that restricts goods transiting between, say, country A to country C, and they go into country B, and country B could...
Thank you very much. And
No, you heard that? Yeah. You heard that?
No, well, that's what he's saying there, that there's always options.
That should come to an end immediately then.
Yeah, well, they're working on it. I'm advised that they're working on it.
How many staffers does CARICOM Secretariat have here right now?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't keep this, but I think that's 2 something or 3 something.
200 something.
Is it true the salaries internationally up to international standard?
No, we had tried, since before I come to the Secretariat, that had been raised with the member states, and this is the function of the financial contributions. And we did with a comparator, and it was clear that you can't even compare us with like EU. No, you can't, no man. You can't even compare with the EU and everything. So they gradually started to try to deal with that. I gather from a staff member, current staff member, that they got an increase the other day, I think on a further 10%, retroactive to January, and it's still not enough. You know, people say, but you're working at CARICOM. Yeah, but what?
I know, Freddie.
Comparative.
The time when the head cleaner at CARICOM used to get more than that. The full professor at UG.
Well, no, something. Freddie, closing me out of time.
No, I want to ask you.
Just take it from me. I took a salary cut when I left the ACP to come to.
Okay. I know to count on him. Are you restrained by your former CARICOM status and coming on a program like this and discuss international relations?
No, I'm restrained by my own conscience. I mean, I'll tell you, those meetings are confidential.
No, we want to do a panel. We want to have a panel in which we're discussing the coming Cold War, the role of Guyana in relation to the new Cold War. Would you be constrained in discussing those topics?
Well, it depends on the questions I put. Like when I use the academic license with Juji, to speak freely on Guyana and Caribbean politics, but I would not come here and tell you about any decision from a CARICOM heads meeting.
No, we want to discuss it. But I want to point out something before we close. I have never seen, and I'm much older than Gildarie, and Mark and I have the same age, so I lived through that era. I have never seen a show jack like this.
I can give you the address.
No,
Please
Mark,
do, yes.
Mark, I've never seen.
I can give you the address.
I've never seen a show jack like this. I've never seen a show that carries coughing.
I can give you the address.
Ladies and gentlemen, that has been a wrap.
Isn't this a unique Mark? Isn't this a unique show jack?
Unique.
So where do you get this, Mr.
Freddie.
Where you get this, Mr. Bissember?
I can give you the address.
Yes. All right, we are out of time, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a pleasure. And we're talking here about CARICOM 50 years anniversary. Has it been a good ride, and has it really served its purpose? And we had two gentlemen in the studio, Dr. Mark Kirton and Neville Bissember Jr., and they have given their inputs into what they thought and some of the experiences of what has been like over the last 50 years. Of course, it's not been very smooth. We continuously have to assess Guyana is part of CARICOM, been putting a lot of money into it, and we do happen to have the headquarters here, 200 and something plus persons from different nations working right in Guyana. So it is something to continuously assess as we go forward. We need all hands on deck, be part of the group, and it can't be alone, and that much has been agreed on. I want to say thank you very much to Freddie Kissoon, my co-host, and of course to the gentlemen of the panel here. You can be back on Wednesday, the same time, same place. If you're on the roadways, please stay safe. It's not been a good year for the roads, not been a good year for murders. And of course, for the rest of the day remaining, happy CARICOM Day all. We have to put our best foot forward and hope for the best thing to come for our country. We need our people on board. Stay safe until then.